At minute 1 of a modern structural fire, the physical environment is already degrading. A localized ignition begins consuming synthetic materials, releasing intense heat and dark smoke. Yet the people inside the building are usually completely unaware that a countdown has started. By minutes 2 and 3, the building's fire alarm usually triggers. But instead of an immediate evacuation, human psychology takes over. People hear the siren and hesitate. They look around, wait for instructions, or assume it is an unannounced drill, losing the most critical seconds they have to escape. At the 4-minute mark, the situation crosses a hard physical boundary. The ambient temperature in the room of origin nears 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, making the space entirely unsurvivable for anyone without advanced thermal protection. When workers die in office fires today, the flames rarely trap them in the first 60 seconds. The true cause of these fatalities is a lethal intersection, the delayed response of the human brain colliding with a blocked exit or a locked door. Decades of post-fire accident investigations point to the exact same reality. When a building's architectural safety features fail at the exact moment human instinct stalls, the timeline always ends in tragedy. This chart compares the heat energy, or British thermal units, released by different materials. 50 years ago, an office filled with natural materials like wood, cotton, and paper would release about 8,000 BTUs per pound when burned. Today, workspaces are packed with synthetic polymers and hard plastics like polystyrene, which burn much hotter and faster, releasing upwards of 18,000 BTUs per pound. Because of that intense chemical heat, the window for a safe escape has drastically compressed. In a legacy environment, it could take up to 29 minutes for a fire to fully consume a room. In a modern office, that same process takes less than 5 minutes. As modern plastics heat up, they undergo off-gassing, a chemical process where solid materials decompose and release combustible vapors. That thick, black smoke accumulating at the ceiling acts as an obscurant, but more importantly, it is superheated, unburned fuel waiting to ignite. Once that smoke layer gets hot enough, it creates thermal radiation feedback. The heat reflects off the ceiling and walls, radiating downward and superheating every desk, chair, and carpet in the room simultaneously. When all those combustible surfaces reach their ignition temperature at the exact same moment, the room experiences flashover. Flashover is the transition phase where a growing fire instantly erupts into a fully developed one, engulfing the entire space. Firm. The chemistry of modern fuel drives this exponential growth so rapidly that by the time an employee physically sees the flames, the fire is already reaching unsurvivable temperatures. The physics of the fire do not give you time to wait, yet human psychology is wired to wait. When an emergency starts, the brain goes through a 4-phase behavioral process: perceiving a cue, interpreting the threat, making a decision, and finally taking action. The most lethal delays happen during the interpretation phase. Through a psychological phenomenon called normalcy bias, people assume everything is fine because it usually is. Coupled with alarm fatigue from frequent drills, workers often interpret a genuine, blaring fire alarm as a routine test or a system glitch. Once they accept the alarm as real, people often enter the information gathering stall. Instead of leaving immediately, they spend precious seconds shutting down computers, saving files, or packing their bags. Next comes herding behavior. In high-stress situations, individuals rarely make independent survival choices. They look around to see what their coworkers are doing. If the group is milling about and chatting, an individual is highly likely to stay right there with them, waiting for a consensus. When the group finally decides to move, cognitive mapping dictates their path. The human brain heavily favors familiar routes, meaning workers will almost always try to exit the building through the front doors they used to walk in, completely ignoring closer emergency exits and creating a deadly bottleneck. This desperate psychological need to validate a threat, gather belongings, and follow the crowd consumes the exact 4-minute window required to survive the physics of the fire. Because human behavior naturally delays evacuation, the physical building must compensate. But when investigators analyze fire fatalities, they consistently find a compounding failure. locked doors, disabled safety systems, and a workforce paralyzed without clear leadership. This is why the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, enforces strict architectural guardrails. Under Standard 1910.36, a workplace must have permanent, fire-resistant exit routes that lead directly outward to a street or open safety zone. Standard 1910.37 goes further, strictly prohibiting the temporary storage of boxes or equipment in any egress path. It also mandates highly visible illuminated exit signs so that fleeing workers can easily spot a way out through thick smoke. To counteract our natural herding behavior, OSHA Standard 1910.38 requires an emergency action plan. This rule mandates the assignment of designated fire wardens, clear authority figures whose job is to break the group's hesitation and initiate an immediate evacuation. While these safety plans may include the use of fire extinguishers, they are strictly limited to the incipient or very early stage of a fire. As this chart shows, different classes of fire require specific suppression methods, and fighting a fire with a portable extinguisher is only viable before the heat begins to rapidly escalate. The responsibility for maintaining this fragile timeline falls heavily on employers. They must relentlessly maintain clear exit routes, conduct rigorous inspections of their alarm systems, and run consistent drills to build the muscle memory that overcomes panic. Employees have a critical role as well. You have to proactively map out the emergency exits closest to your desk, immediately report any blocked stairwells, and treat every single alarm as a legitimate threat the second it sounds. A modern fire fueled by synthetic materials will not pause while you save a document or wait for your coworkers to move. The 4-minute timeline to flashover is an absolute scientific reality. Your only defense is a flawless safety system and the immediate, independent decision to get out.